Alrighty then. So we're going to start back up. So the first thing I am going to show you is how to calibrate and profile a monitor. I'm going to do it on my laptop right now. So this is what you need, is this thing right here. You can check this out from the Digital Lab right here. They have several of these. It actually includes two pieces. It's got this hardware puck right here, and then it's also got a thumb drive in here that has the software on it. The software is free. You're not stealing this if you use this on your machine. It works with this. This is an older version of the software, so once you install this, when you launch the program the first time, just do the most recent update. That's all. I mean, they update this stuff all the time, so it's impossible to keep it on here. But nonetheless, that'll get you the right software. You don't have to go searching for it, all that kind of stuff. So you install the software onto your computer. How often should you actually profile or do your calibration for your stuff? So for me, yeah, if you're working for Pixar, you do it every day. I don't work for Pixar. I work for myself. What you really should consider about it is this. Typically, if you're just looking to do general work, you should probably profile your monitor once every couple of weeks. Once a month at the very least. Every couple of weeks makes sense. However, if you are doing any color critical work, you should do it that morning. And if you're doing color critical work tomorrow, you should do it again tomorrow. Every time the color that you are, where it's really the intensive, I'm really trying to dial this in, you should profile it. If you're working on an Excel spreadsheet or writing a Word document, you really don't need a profiled monitor for it. The words won't really change. But this matters if you're trying to do color. So you've got this. It's a USB connection on the other side. The program will walk you through everything that you need to know about how to do this. So I'm going to show you as well as walk you through it as together. So once you get this thing installed, it will actually be in your applications folder. And it's this thing called iProfiler. And it's right here, i1 Profiler. And you double click on this guy and it launches the software. It will check for updates automatically, so you'll know if you don't have one. And then you can profile all of these different devices. You can actually, I'm going to turn the, so we have a little ambience in here, but still able to see this. You can profile all of these different things with this particular piece of software. Now, there is a bigger brother version of this that they have also here at the Digital Lab that is state-of-the-art. This is state-of-the-art for your monitor. But when you get into doing projectors, printers, you can profile damn near anything. If you can get color on it, you can profile it. So I tell people this all the time. If you want to try to run a piece of leather through one of those Epson 3800s or 4900s, if you can get the leather through it and you get ink on it, you can profile it. So you can get reproducible color on leather. You can do it on fabric. You can do it on... You don't have to buy a typical piece of paper that you would normally do it on. If you want to print on this kind of paper right here, you can actually print targets out on this and profile this. Amazing, right? Okay, so anyway, but what we're going to profile is a monitor, and it's this guy right here. So you click on Display Monitor right here, and you'll see this screen pops up. Now, in my case, I've got two options here. I can do my color LCD, which is my computer right here. This Canon right here is the projector that we've got going that's connected to my computer. So in our case, I am going to do my monitor right here. In this drop-down menu right here, you leave this at its default, this white LED. Don't get into changing any of these unless you have a specific reason to do this. If you knew the monitor that you were trying to do was an OLED, which is a different kind of LED, you could actually pick this. But in our case, this white LED is what this screen actually is. The white point in here, you do not want to leave it native. You want to change this. The white point gets changed to D65. D65 stands for Daylight 65. It actually stands for a color temperature. We have not talked about color temperature in this class yet. We should talk about color temperature really quick. So let me see. I actually think I've got a quick illustration. I'm going to jump out of this really fast. In order to jump out of this, I actually have to quit the program. And let me see here really quick. This is color temperature. What happens in color temperature is this. If you imagine you take a theoretical, what they call it's a theoretical black body. It's something that where they've removed all the energy from it. There is no energy in it at all. It is completely cold, as cold can be, because none of the molecules in it are moving. There's no energy in it at all. That would be 0 degrees Kelvin. It's just a scale, just like a temperature scale, like Celsius or Fahrenheit. But 0 degrees Kelvin says that there is no energy in this thing at all. It's completely void of energy. It can't be any darker, and it can't be any colder. So as you start to add energy to this thing, the molecules in it start to move. And as you add more energy to them, eventually they start to glow. And as you continue to add more and more energy to them, they get this object, it gets hotter and hotter, and it starts to glow, and it actually starts to, in the very beginning, once you get up to around 2000 degrees Kelvin, it's this kind of yellowish color. As you continue to make it hotter and hotter and hotter, you start climbing up in temperature. When you get up into this range up in here, into the 11,000 degrees Kelvin, 9,000, 10,000 degrees Kelvin, up in this range in here, you end up with a bright, it ends up very, very, very bluish. Somewhere right in the middle between this really, really yellow region here and this really, really blue region over here, you actually end up with a neutral color, and that happens at 6,500 degrees Kelvin. Now, there is some debate. Some people talk about 5,000 degrees Kelvin is neutral color. Some people push it up even higher. But the truth of the matter is, for monitors today, in all pre-press work, all RGB computer work, all the stuff that we deal with, 6,500 degrees Kelvin, which happens right in this area right in here, is considered to be neutral. It's not too blue, it's not too orange. Does that make sense? So when we use this program and we say to it, what white point do you want for your computer? The white point means it's done in temperatures in degrees Kelvin. So again, I'm going to click on display, click on this monitor, changing this, the white point here to 6,500 degrees Kelvin. Then the next thing down, this luminance, again, you do not want this, what they're calling native in here. What luminance is the brightness of this monitor. How bright should this monitor actually be? Now, we've already talked about the room sets your black point. How dark you have your room establishes how black your black is. There's no other way to control it. There's no make my monitor blacker. Your monitor turned off, this is as black as your monitor can go. The room, well, watch this. If I turn on the lights, that isn't as black as it used to be. This controls your black point. The brightness of your monitor, the brightness control on your monitor, the thing that does this, this controls your white point. This is your range. You can have this software help tell you where this should actually be. For most retouchers, they do this at a very specific brightness. And I'll show you if you use this drop-down menu right here. They'll click on this and they'll usually do between 120 and 140 candelas per square meter. All this is telling you is how bright your monitor is. So I would suggest you set it at this. In this case, it's 120. You could do a custom point in here if you really knew what you were doing and possibly set this to 140. It would make your monitor slightly brighter. But at any rate, you want to control this, because if you start doing your retouching on a really dark monitor and then you crank up the brightness, your file looks brighter. Well, you haven't changed your file at all. All you changed was your monitor, right? That's not viable, so you need to lock these numbers down. And then finally, you can leave this tonal response curve at exactly where it is. And the last thing down here, the gamma. You want to set this as a gamma of 2.2, which it does by its default. It's this number right here. 2.2, it is the contrast of your monitor. That's what we're talking about here. This program will set this up for you. So once all of this gets established like this, you simply hit the next arrow key. and you will see that you get this color chart up here. These are the colors that this software is going to put out on my monitor, and this puck is going to read them. And then if the colors show up the same, it doesn't make any change. But wherever there's a difference in color, it will adjust for that. Does that make sense? So we're going to go ahead and say next to this, and it's going to tell you what to do. It's going to say, click the below button to begin. So I'm going to click the below button, although this is actually getting me to create one. Let me go back to this. This is not, oh, I want to start measurement. I'm not clicking the next button. Sorry, guys. Start measurement here is what you want to do. So go ahead and click on start measurement, and this thing should not crash like that. I know. I have all sorts of problems doing this on this laptop. So if this doesn't work on my laptop, again, I will show you. I will end up doing it on the studio guy right up here. Oh, another thing you should know about, and it's this guy right here. See this thing right here? It's called this Ambient Light Smart Control. If you click on this, what'll end up happening is that the camera in your computer will measure the available light in the room and try to change your profile to compensate for the light. Otherwise known as how to fuck up your profile and make it absolutely worthless. Because if you're working in a room with varying light and then this thing is trying to measure and vary the light for you, you've fucking thrown it all to hell. There's no, you're not locking this stuff down. Everything is changing all the time. Somebody walks into your room wearing a white shirt, the light level goes up, your white changes, and all of a sudden your file changes. You haven't done a thing. The person who walked in the room with a white shirt did. There's another place this exists. I'm going to jump out of this. Unfortunately, I have to quit every time to do this. In your system preferences, this is true for all Macintoshes. In your system preferences under displays, if you look at this built-in color, this is my display for my laptop. See this thing right here? Automatically adjust the brightness. That's the same thing. That's the other how to fuck up this profile button. If you have these things enabled, your screen is changing automatically. You're not changing it. It's doing it all on its own. It's getting brighter and darker and brighter and darker. How on earth can you control anything if it's got a mind of its own and it's doing shit and you don't know it's doing it? You've got to have this stuff shut off. So that has to be unchecked. It's in two places. So again, in your system preferences, but also here in the i1 Profiler software. Okay, back to display. Again, D65, luminance, 120 candelas, gamma at 2.2. That part's all correct. I am doing my monitor here. I'm going to go to next, start measurement. And okay, so we're not going to watch this on my laptop. So you're actually going to see this happen on the, you'll be able to listen to this and you'll see this happen. I'm going to change this screen right here so you can actually watch this happen on this guy. So I'm going to change this really quickly. Oh, thrilled when this goes to sleep, it logs you out. Okay, again, display. We're changing this to this white LED, not this. We want to do the iMac. That's what we're trying to profile here, not the projector. And again, so what? Oh, sorry. How badly could they get this guy? Okay, back to the iMac, white LED, D65 is my limit. It's 120 candela per square meter. That's what you want. Tone curve is standard. 2.2 is your gamma. Do not have this guy checked right here. Come back over, hit your next arrow right here. Start the measurement on this guy, and it's going to tell you what to do. It's going to start blinking at you, and everybody look up here. There's a cover on this guy. You pull this cover to the side, and you twist it around, which reveals this lens. This lens is the thing that's actually going to do the measuring of color. There's a counterweight on this other side to actually allow you to drape this on your computer. It's suggested that you tilt your computer back like this so that this thing sits on your computer. If you can't see what I'm talking about, stand up and look at this. Basically, what's going to happen is this. I'm going to put the lens right here on my camera like this, and I'm going to drape this guy over the back end like this so that this thing is against my computer like this. The reason they want you to tilt your computer back is if it tips forward like this thing is not against your monitor. So when you tilt it back, it rests against your monitor, and then you come up and you say, okay, let's start the party. There's a two-step process for this. There's a two-step process for this. The first round of this, and you'll see it's throwing colors up here. The first thing it's going to do is try to figure out how bright or unbright my monitor is. So what it's telling me right now with this monitor is it's not bright enough. My target white balance point is 120. This thing is measuring a luminance of 71. It's saying that my monitor is not bright enough. So I'm going to hit my monitor up, the brightness on my monitor, and you will see this number starts to change. Finally, you'll get up to around 130. You'll see I can't get any closer, but it's pretty close enough. But how do I know how bright my monitor is? You've actually, I mean, this is one of the things I hate about Apple. You've got to remember how many little clicks on that brightness bar it was. So look at my brightness bar when I bring it back up. I'm going to add one more click. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about somewhere in the middle, but I can't even count the number. Right? So here, and it's too bright now, so I've got to keep going up and down. So that's 3 of them right there, and that's the right one. That's 3 more, and I'll go back down. So it's 7 clicks up. How scientific is that? But this is now the correct brightness. My room is set my black point. This is now set my white point. So now, and you'll see that it's saying it's a little too bright. You need to come down, but we can't get exactly in the middle right there. So don't actually, there is a way of doing this. I think if you hold down the Option key and you click brightness, it does it in smaller increments. No, it just brings up other shit. Is it, what is it?
I think it might be the shift.
The shift key and hit brightness. And it'll come down and, yeah, but then I'm really never going to know what's going on in here in terms of setting it. But at any rate, you're trying to get close. This is another reason to have an external monitor that's not an iMac. You don't have to go through this rigmarole. You set the brightness and you just leave it there. But at any rate, I'm going to hit next now. This is a two-step process. The first step here, it's going to start trying to get my monitor to be the values that I set up. It's trying to say, he wants a white point of D65. And then it's also going to say he wants a gamma, a contrast of 2.2. So it's going to go through this whole first round to give me that. Then it's going to repeat this process to say, how well did we do? How close are we? This is where the derivation of color gets measured. This is where when it's asking for blue and this monitor is not giving it blue, it measures that value, it builds it into the profile, and we're ready to go. Make sense? So we're going to continue to go through this guy. It happens actually pretty quick. It says a couple of minutes. So the whole time, it's kicking out color that is known. This thing is measuring the color that this monitor is showing it. If the color is spot on, we're great. If the color is off, it measures how far off it is, and it's building a profile to then fix that derivation, that change of color. And when you see the results of this, you will be stunned. Wow, that's a big build-up. I sure hope you're stunned. With my luck, the computer will just crash, and you just have to take my word for it. I used to play the Jeopardy song during this. Dun, 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 dun. Anyway, somebody actually was in my first class this morning. Alex put it on. We were having people try to do a quick lighting setup, and he whipped that on. It was, yeah, had to be there. Don't you love how they always do the timing on here, and it's never anywhere close? Less than a minute, and 10 minutes later, less than a minute, 10 seconds to go. Okay, so now it's telling you something again. This whole thing is blinking at you, and it's saying, okay, spin that guy back around. So I'm going to spin this guy back around, and it should know that. And now it's going to actually try to measure the light, the ambient light for the room. I don't really want it to do that, so I'm going to just hit continue. Next for this guy. I'm going to get rid of this. I have no idea why this guy's showing up. What I wanted to show you, though, is this. This is the difference. Look at these. This is the color the software asked for. This is what the monitor gave it. This is the color the software asked for. This is the color the monitor gave it. How on earth can you guys do color correction when a monitor is that far off? When you're expecting this color and you're getting that? Look at all of these. Look at how wildly different these things. Look at this. Ask for, given. 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 There's no way. You can't eyeball this stuff. Impossible. But now that we've done this and gone through all of this, the software is going to make all of these adjustments for us. So now when it asks for this color, instead of the monitor giving us this, it's going to give us the right color because you calibrated it and profiled it. So again, we're simply going to go into the next measurement right here and hit create and save the profile. However, this is the name of your profile. iMac ICC. What the fuck does that mean? That's worthless to me. So instead, I'm going to erase that. These computers actually used to have numbers on them. This one doesn't have a number on it. So I'm going to pretend it's mine. Okay? You would do this for your own computer. So I'm going to pretend it's mine. And what I'm actually going to call this is the same naming convention I use for my files. I'm going to do 20160914 underscore VER underscore iMac. That's what I'm going to name this thing so I know exactly what it is and what it's for, and I'm going to hit create, and it's going to then change the profile. Now you can go in and actually change these things. You can do all sorts of previews and all this kind of stuff. I am not going to do that. I'm going to quit this, and I'm going to show you what it is we did. Now, you cannot see this on the screen, so I need everybody to come up over here and look at this screen. Because when I change the profile for this screen, it's not reflected on that monitor. It actually happens here. So if you, I'm going to get rid of this to show you how I got there. Again, up to the Apple menu, down to System Preferences, to Displays. This is where, again, I've got two of these because one is for the built-in Retina display, this guy right here. The other is for this Canon projector. So here in display, again, the resolution of this is where you set resolution. Again, this has got automatic adjust brightness clicked on it. Hey, Lexi, bring your list. Tell them they've also got, by default, automatically adjust brightness enabled in system preferences. How to make this thing change. You want to see this thing change? Do this. We just changed the brightness of the computer. Did you change your file? No, you didn't change your file, but that just changed. The brightness on that just went down because this room is now brighter. How on earth can you retouch in a world like that? You can't. So anyway, they need to uncheck this automatically adjust brightness and system preferences. This is a minefield. Okay. Yeah, I know. Anyway, sorry, I didn't finish showing you the rest of that. So back here to system preferences, to displays. Again, for this built-in Retina, right here under color, you'll see that this is where the color actually is. It's sitting right here. See this thing that says iMac? I think this is how Apple ships this guy. Any difference there, guys? That look any different to you at all? Mm-hmm. Apple ships their things. They drive the blue on these things really hard because it makes it seem brighter, but it puts blue into all your fucking files. Then you put a whole bunch of red into your file to try to get rid of the blue, and then you go to print your thing out and it's red. And you're going, why? Because Steve Jobs liked his shit really bright and blue. Okay, point well taken. Okay, everybody back. We got to actually work on some files in a big way, quick. All righty. So I'm back on my laptop, so hopefully the screen capture is going to actually be showing you something again. Okay. So in class number 2, let me see where we are at. Okay, I'm going to deal with that part later. Okay, I need everybody to do this for me. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay, so in your class 2 files, inside of any of this, whatever, there should be a folder in here that's, oh, here, let me change my screen here so that the projector is showing you the same thing I'm looking at. Okie dokie. So there's a file in here that's called, it's 20100327 _ Woods 07. These are files of mine. Again, I told you guys this last week. I'm just going to reiterate it right now. You're welcome to use all of my files to do practice work for this class. You cannot use these files for anything outside of this class. So I don't want to see these pictures up for, you know, hey, this is my retouching work. Come, you know, hire me, blah, 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 blah. So at any rate, inside, actually, let me find, I'm going to, so that my folder looks like your folder. So hold on one second. So suite 2, this guy. Yeah, this has actually got a TIFF in here, and it's also got an XMP file in here. You can throw both of those away. You don't really need those guys. So you should only have 2 files in here. If you click on the preview of one, you'll actually see that there's a version of this color target in here. If you click on the other one, you'll see that there's no target in there. What I want to show you is basically how we really work with this color target in terms of doing color balance work. So that's where we're going to start. If you select both of these files by holding down the Shift key, click one and then hold down the Shift key and click on the other, and then drag both of these on top of your Photoshop icon. They should both open up into Photoshop. A lot of times you can simply do Photoshop, just double click on them directly. Sometimes these raw files will open up in something else. Sometimes they'll open up in iPhoto will try to open them, or somebody else. But this is actually going to open it up in into Camera Raw. And it should look like this. And I have no idea why I've got these warning symbols up here. Oh. Well, there they go. So is everybody in Camera Raw with these 2 files? So again, you're assigning the file, yeah. You can get rid of the color picker, that's how this is. So just cancel out, and then go back in and drag this. Oh wait, you don't have these files. Oh, you do? Eureka! Okay, hallelujah. So anyway, yeah, look at this again. It's in week 2 in the student folder. It's the 2 files that are in the folder that have woods on it. If you see like this, if you've got this little red that's happening on your file like this, can everybody see this screen over here? It's actually because you've got these warnings set. It's up here on the histogram. There's a highlight warning and there's a shadow warning. If you click the little triangle at the very top, that guy will go away. If you click the one on the bottom, it'll show you the shadow warnings. Click that guy, you'll see the shadow warnings. All those are indications of is something that's actually blown out on one side or the other. So it's these little guys, these little points. Look at my screen right here. If you click on this guy right here, it shows you this is burning out to 255. If you click on this guy right here, you'll see it gets flagged in blue. I don't have any shadow here that is in blue, so you don't actually see anything that's happening up there. So I'm going to undo these 2 guys right now. So first things first, in getting Photoshop set up correctly, and you need to do this before you do anything. Do not do anything else in Photoshop in Camera Raw except to get the file open in Camera Raw. We are going to build a new set of defaults for Camera Raw because right now Camera Raw is not set up the best way it can be set up for you. However, if you make any change, if you change the exposure, the color, if you change any of these sliders, and then build the new default, those changes will become built into your new default. You do not want to do that. What you want to do first is this. If you look up here along these little icons along the top, you'll see one right here that looks like a lens. It's right in the middle. If you hover over it, it'll say lens corrections. You want to click on that guy. And when you click on that guy, you'll get 2 tabs right here. You'll get one that says profile and one that says manual. You want to click on the profile one. And then finally down here, you want to check these 2 check boxes. You want to check remove chromatic aberration, and you also want to check on enable lens correction. Is that done? I mean, enable profile correction. Are yours checked? Were they already on? No, they were not on. Look at the difference this thing makes. Turn profile on and off. Look at the image. Look at what happens. This is not only dealing with the vignetting at the edge of your frame, this is also the fact this file, the file that I'm using here, the lens here has got a distortion in it. It's actually called, this distortion right here is called barrel distortion. The lens is making the center of my image look closer than it should. So it's like the image is being wrapped around the face of a barrel. That's barrel distortion. There's another distortion that's called pin cushioning, and it's exactly the opposite. It's where the image appears to be, the center of the image appears to be pushed too far in your screen. But if you click on this, Adobe has gone to great lengths to come up with files, testing of these files, to actually give you this correction. Wouldn't you want this to be on for every file that you open up in Photoshop? Of course you would, right? What is chromatic aberration? The only place you can see chromatic aberration is at 400%. So to get there, I'm going to actually ask you to pick in your tools up here, pick the zoom tool, and then I want you to come over to see these branches on the tree right down here at the bottom. You need to start clicking on these, just the branches right here. Keep clicking on these until this number right down here, until you get to the 400%. And keep clicking on this guy, and eventually you'll get to 400%. Your screen will look like mine right now. Uncheck remove chromatic aberration, and you'll see what chromatic aberration actually is. What chromatic aberration is, it happens along areas of high contrast. If you can see on my screen right here, you can see just this edge right here. See that green cast that's right there? There's green that happens on one side of the lines, and then if you look on the opposite side, you get the opposite of this. You get a magenta cast that happens on the other side. You'll also see a green line that's happening right here. Again, you need to be in at that 400% on edges of really high contrast. That's where you pick up chromatic aberration. If you click this on, you will see that that is removed. When I first did this file, there was no remove chromatic aberration in Camera Raw. I did this by hand. I cloned that color out. It took me days. Hate my life in those kind of situations. Hate everything about it. There's not enough liquor in the world that makes this mind-numbingly enough stupid to enjoy it. You just get drunk and mean. And you still got to get rid of the chromatic aberration. This is one button. Wouldn't you also want that done for every one of your files? Yes, you would. So that being the case, we need to create this as a new default now. So in order to do that, come over to this drop-down menu. Look at where my screen is. I'm over in this little guy right over here in the corner. Click on this drop-down menu, and you want to come down and you want to sit here and say, Save New Camera Raw Defaults. If you do that, this will now be permanently on. Every time you bring a file into Photoshop, this will be the new default for you. But this is why I said you can't change anything else. Because if you change hue saturation, if you change something to black and white, if you shifted your exposure, opened up your highlights, built up, all of those would be saved as defaults as well. And you do not want that to happen. Are we good about this? If for some reason you fucked this up, and you did, oh my God, I had a two-stop exposure adjustment on my file, and it made it my new default. Now every file I open up gets a two-stop correction on it. You can reset this back to the original. And to do that, again, go to that same drop-down menu, come down here to Reset Camera Raw Defaults, and this will take you back to the way Adobe ships this product. But then remember, if you do that, it's going to turn all this remove chromatic aberration and enable lens correction, profile lens correction. Those will be off because that is the way Adobe ships this stuff. We good on this? Okay. To get this back into your screen so we can work with it, if you click on this little drop-down menu right here, you can come and you can just say Fit in View, and you'll get all the way back to this image. Running along the top of this image, we've actually got the magnifying tool. You know what this is. A lot of these tools you already know from Lightroom. A lot of these tools, well, you guys have been through enough digital work. You should know, are we all pretty comfortable with the basic panel and what's going on here? Again, I'm clicking back in the basic panel. Are we pretty good with this guy? Just to go one step further, Peyton, when we were talking about that LAB construction right here, it's these two sliders right here. This right here, that's the A slider for LAB. This is the B. It's the same thing. They're slightly different in Photoshop. They cock them around the color wheel just a little bit more than is in true LAB, but it's the same thing. And so what you get is in LAB, this is the A and B, this is color, and this is L. This is the exposure. That's luminance. And so that's basically the system. That's what's at work here. Color correction in RAW is done in LAB. Okay, so we need to do color balance this guy. So I'm going to actually ask you to destroy the color balance first. To do it, it's the third tool over the top. This is the white balance tool. If you hover over it, you'll see that. And you remember I said, now we were looking at this, color passport checker. We were looking at this little guy right here. And you'll see that the color of this little color passport checker right here is got the exact same color. It doesn't have this bottom set, but we don't use this bottom set for a whole lot of things. You do use it for a few things, but not a lot. But it's this top guy that we care about. This is identical. That's just a big version of it. To pervert the color, I want you to actually click on the red patch, and you'll throw this thing out of whack. It'll be sort of a cyanic color. Again, what it's trying to do is it's trying to neutralize this color out. It's trying to make this a neutral gray. It can't actually get there, but that's what it's trying to do. If you look at the readout, the RGB readout that's sitting right up here, you'll actually see what's at play in all of this. Then I want you to hover over the patch, the gray patch that is just underneath the red, and click on it once. And then if you notice the RGB values that are right underneath this guy right here, you see that they are all exactly the same. That is how you achieve color neutrality in this image. It takes what it knows this is supposed to be neutral. It knows that these values are all supposed to be the same. So it adjusts the color up here at the top to achieve neutrality in this patch. I always suggest that you use this patch. It's not a really good move to use the lightest of the patches because if this light patch is actually pure white, Photoshop doesn't know how to average that out. There's no way if you've got a 255, 255, 255, it could be overexposure. Photoshop will actually usually give you a warning and say, this thing is too light, you need to pick something darker, in which case you could go down to the patch that's right underneath this green color right here. But I typically pick the red patch. It's the safest one to use. You also, although this will work in Photoshop, you want to avoid the darker colors. And the reason you want to avoid the good darker colors is that color contamination you spot up in the highlights a whole lot more than you do down in the shadows. You will see color casting in light colored walls. Like for instance, if you look at these walls right here with this these tungsten lights on it, you can pick up a color cast here in the highlights. But do you pick up a color cast in the black of this picture frame? You can see that that's yellow. Can you tell it's yellow here? You can't. You don't pick up color casting in dark areas. So that's why we stick to the lighter areas to do this with. Now that we've got this thing color balanced, we need to apply it to the image that doesn't have the color balancing in it. This is the whole trick. I don't want to work with this file. I just wanted to use it to give me color balance. So in order to apply the corrections we've made here to this file down here, to the second file, you guys should have the two files right here. If you only opened one file, you don't have this. It just is the file here. But if you open multiple files, they end up being in this strip that runs right down here. You can open 1,000 files. All 1,000 will be down here. I don't suggest doing that, but you could. So at any rate, that's what's actually going on here. To apply the color balances, the changes that we've made here, you come up to this drop-down menu right here next to Film Strip, and you do Select All, and you see that it selects the second version of this. Then back up to the very same menu down to Sync Settings. And a dialog box will open up. In this dialog box, these are all the possible things that you can actually sync. In our case, the only thing that we have done is we have enabled lens profile corrections, we've enabled chromatic aberration correction, and we have adjusted the white balance. You have all sorts of subsets here. You can create your own, or you could say, I want to do everything. In our case, that would also work. It simply checks all these boxes for you. So at the very least, you want white balance, and you also want lens profile corrections and chromatic aberration. And then you simply say, OK. And then you'll see that that file just changed its color. And now this file that does not have the card in it has actually been color neutralized. And then we could now open this file. Is everybody clear on that? So this is how we end up working with this color target. If you go back to my color target, I've also told you one other thing last week. If you look at the color target again, if you read the RGB value of this, I told you guys that typically, again, that white patch is a true value. It actually has texture to it. It should not be page white. What is page white in numbers? 255, 255, 255. This white patch should not read that. This white patch is real. It has texture to it. It's some printed thing. This should not be 255, 255, 255. That would be too bright. Typically, I do this in a program called Capture One. That's what I shoot tethered in. Capture One has a slightly different processing engine than Photoshop has, so these numbers shift slightly. In Capture One, I look for a value here from 245 to 250. Again, that leaves me slightly below page white. It's a real tone. In Camera Raw, you can probably knock 5 or 10 of those points off. It should probably be around the 235, 240 range, 240, 240, but somewhere in there. It's not as exact. I never shoot to this program, but I'm just telling you, when you measure this right now and you see that the readout on this is 235, 235, 234, this in Capture One is actually a perfect 245, 245, 245. Make sense? So that's how you judge your exposure. If these values right here were reading in the 200s, I would know that my file was underexposed, right? Then what would I do about it? I'm underexposed. I measure this, I'm underexposed. What do I do? And how do I lighten it up? Can I lighten it up in software? Can I? Can I lighten a file up in software and affect the raw file? No. Once the raw file has been made, it is set in stone. You can't change it. You have got to change the exposure in your camera. Fair? Okay. Are there questions about this? All right, don't worry, guys. This actually gets better, I hope. All right, you can cancel out of this. You don't need to stay here and in here to do this. We can cancel out of this. We are going to cancel, sorry, all the changes to this. We don't need to keep any of that. So you remember in our lecture, please, Verser, don't have any more of that lecture. I'm just showing you a slide from it. You remember this slide in the beginning of this? And I said, okay, so what we just did when we calibrated this monitor, we just built this profile right here, this monitor. We got this thing at a known state. We set its white point and we set its contrast. Then we used the hardware and the software to actually build this monitor profile so that any derivation that we get in this is corrected. You guys are comfortable with that, right? We're good on that, right? What we need though now is we need the one for the camera. We need to actually do one for your camera to do the exact same thing, to get a file into this where any discrepancy that exists in your camera is taken care of. Wouldn't that be great? It would be. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to build that guy next. In order to do that, go back into your profile. And if you look here, it's under the DNG custom example files. There should be a single file in there with a, there's actually a folder in there, but there's also a single file in here. And you'll see it's a picture of a girl in a purple sweater. You guys don't have that? Or you do have that? You should have it. Do you guys all have it? Yeah? If you double click on that, you should go right back into Camera Raw, because this is a CR2 raw file. So did everybody get to Camera Raw? That's right where I need you to be. Okay. This, again, uses this color target to build the profile for this. Again, these are a set of known values. We are going to run this through a software program. It's going to measure these values, and it's going to generate a profile for my camera that is the derivation of this. Make sense? However, this software only works on DNG files. So first thing we need to do is we need to make a DNG of this. Make sense? In order to do that, all you have to do is come down to here and do save image over here. Not open this as an object, not open this as an image. Over here, lower left-hand corner, click on Save Image, and a dialog box will open up, and it's going to be, okay, here are your save as options in here. This is what you can do. We're going to make a DNG out of this. We're going to actually say to save it in the very same location so that it goes in the same place that it, where we came from. You could change the destination if you wanted to, but there's no reason for us to do that. The naming of this, we want to leave the naming exactly the same so that we know what it's for. The naming that it's going to use is the file name, the document name of this. It's simply going to add an extension of DNG. Right now we've got an extension of .cr2 on the file underneath. .cr2 is a Canon file. A DNG is an Adobe RAW file. That's what it is. An NEF is a Canon RAW file. Again, if you were to save it an NEF as a DNG, the same thing would happen right here. The file extension, .dng, you can pick it right here. That's exactly what we want it to be. It is a digital negative format. This seems somewhat redundant. Compatibility, you can leave all of that. JPEG preview set, you can leave all of that set up as it is. All you want to do now is hit the save button, and this thing will build a DNG for you. So hit save. You'll usually, if you do a whole ton of these at once, there's a little wheel down here that spins, but it happens really fast. This has now been done. We don't need to do anything more with this image. We can simply hit cancel to get out of here. If you do that and then go back into the Finder to where we were, you will see right now there is a new file in there that is the DNG. Does everybody have this guy? Does anybody not have this guy? We good over here? That looks great. You're good. Just hit OK on that. Cancel. Okay, go ahead and do it one more time. Just double click. And hit save image. Save. Process. There's a write permission error. There's something wrong with this computer. It's not letting you write to, are you doing, is this on the class partition? Where is, let's go back into the Finder and see where's your file in Finder. So is this on your hard drive or is this on, it's on this, you can't do it on this. Copy this file just to your desktop. And I'll try it there. And it's done, so now hit cancel out of it. And there it is, right there. Okay, so you got the DNG. Everybody else has got the DNG, right? Okay, there is software programs that I've given you. There's two different ones. Occasionally, one of these programs will not work on your computer, and then you have to use the other one. In my experience, the two of them are this. There is the DNG Profile Editor. It's this one right here. This is the one that was actually built by Adobe. There's also this Passport Color Checker. This is actually the software that comes with this Passport Color Checker. I want you to use this guy first. So double click on Passport Color Checker. I've given you both of these files. I am not going to change this or update this. And this guy should open up, and inside of it, it should say in there, drag and drop the DNG image here. Does everybody have that? So if you can find the DNG on your folder, that's great. If you can't find it, you can also come up to the File menu and come down to Add Image, and then you navigate to wherever that folder is. So in my case, see if I can get there a little quicker. In the DNG files, this is where my DNG is right here, and I'm going to open up and say OK. And it should be loading your image. And also analyzing your image. Did this work for you? Does your screen look like mine now? It actually found the color checker in there, and it actually put these little squares all the way around it. Did that work for everybody? If for some reason, yeah, go and launch. Not that one. This one. Right. I lost it. Okay, so come up, I'll tell you where it is. Come up to File. Oh, actually, you're in the Finder right now. So just do Find. Go back to your Finder. Come up here to Finder, drop that menu, Finder, hide others, to get rid of the screen so you can actually find this file. And this is this GeoTube, that's the DNG, and you can actually just drag that on top of this, which is the Color Passport Checker. It should do the same thing. Or click on the Color Passport Checker, there it is, simply drag it on top of it and let go. So it should have analyzed this. If sometimes it can't find this, if it can't find it, you use these tools right over here on the left-hand side to actually locate it. You will see that also if it ends up being slightly offset, you can click on these little green dots and move this thing around. You can click on these guys and shift this around. There's no need to, though, if this was successful, and this actually was successful. Before we finish this, I need you to go back into the Finder one more time. You need to find that file again that we just did this with. It's this DNG right here, and you need to copy the file name. Now, the easiest way for me to copy a file name is to select the file. Don't double click it, just select it once. If you hit the Enter key or the Return key, it selects the name for you. Then up to the Edit menu and do Copy. We've now copied this file name onto our clipboard. Then come back into the Color Passport Checker profile stuff and hit Create Profile. You will see that it knows what camera I shot this with. However, this is meaningless. I build these camera profiles not only for the camera that I shoot, but also for the lighting that I do them in. So I create one of these profiles for every single photo shoot that I do. Again, you want good color, you want predictable color, get off the fucking lazy ass train and get on the, oh my God, I can't believe he's making me do this train. It will change everything for you. So, with that said, Canon 5DS Mark II is meaningless because we did copy the name on our file. I think you can come up, if you do edit, there is no edit menu here to paste. So you have to hit, I think, Command V will paste your file name in there. And now we are creating a profile for our camera that was for this photo shoot, for this specific one. It has the exact same file name. Does that work for you guys? Does that make sense? Okay, this is where it gets placed. It gets actually placed. By default, it should have picked your camera profiles. It should have done this for you. If you do not have camera profiles here, you need to let me know. At any rate, in this case, I've got to change the naming of mine slightly because I've done this 1,000 times and I've got this profile in there 1,000 times. So I'm going to change mine to version 10. You guys do not need to do this. You won't have this profile on your computer. And then go ahead and hit save. And it will generate the profile for you, and you get to watch the little sliding line. It will say that this profile has been successfully created and you can now use it. So go ahead and say okay, and you can quit this profile now. You've actually generated the profile for this image. So to use it, we may have to restart Photoshop. I don't know. Camera Raw is not going right now, so hopefully not. Go back to the original CR2 file that we used to make this thing and drag that on top of Photoshop right now, and you should come into Camera Raw. The first thing that I'm going to do is color balance this thing. In order to color balance it, I'm going to zoom in on the color target slightly. I'm going to click on the white balance tool, and I'm going to click on that gray patch right next to this. Now, I have not clicked on the gray patch yet, and you will see that my RGB readout here is 197, 197, 194. That red should equal the green and blue numbers. That is a deficiency in red. That is telling me that the color balance of this thing is slightly cyanic. CR2. Yeah, do the CR2. Perfect. So again, zoom in a little bit so you can click on this white patch. If you then click on the white patch to do your color balancing, you will see that those numbers are now the same. I've got a 197, 197, 196, close enough. However, what I have not used on this is my custom profile that I just made. In order to use that custom profile, you come across to the little camera icon that sits up here at the top. If you click on this camera calibration icon, you will see that the camera profile being used right now is Adobe Standard. If you click on this drop-down menu, though, you should see the profile that you just built. Do you guys see it? Yep. Then pick it. Did you see any shift at all? If you didn't, go back, click on that drop-down camera profile again and go back to Adobe Standard and look at the sweater. And then go back to the profile that you created for this. Where's my 10? Where's the one? Oh, here it is that I built right here. Could you do that? Do you know that your camera is that fucked up? If you did, how would you even do this fix? So what's happening here, if you look at the patches, specifically, look at the patches, do again, go back to the Adobe Standard, and you'll see the patches that are really shifting the most on this. Back to Adobe Standard. The ones that are shifting the most, the blue shifts a great deal. And let me go back to my 10 right here. The blue and the purple, those are actually shifting a lot. You see the blue got darker. What that's telling me is that my sensor in this camera is hypersensitive to blue. It's reading more blue than it should read. Well, do you know that about your camera? No. So without now knowing that about my camera, I have got predictable, neutral color that I'm now bringing into a neutral, mathematical, theoretical workspace called Adobe RGB. So I have taken care of this whole step of the process. I'm going to cancel out of mine. Don't cancel out of yours yet. This whole step of the process, I just built my camera profile. I am in Adobe RGB. I'm in Camera Raw right now. I simply now need to move that file into Adobe RGB. This is a mathematical neutral space. I will never have to worry about that again as soon as I save that file. Every time I actually want to view this file, I view it correctly because I have built this monitor profile right here, and I'm doing it on a calibrated monitor. And finally, if I build the correct printer profiles for this, when that thing kicks out to my printer, it will look like my monitor. Now, right about now, you people should be fucking jumping up and down and yelling. I have given you perfect exposure, perfectly neutral color. I have profiled your camera. I've profiled your monitor. You are now in a color-managed workspace, a whole workflow that's color-managed from beginning to end. There's no guessing about this. There's no, oh, somebody told me to do this. That shit's gone. And it only cost you $99.99. Or you can get the big color target, the one I've been using. It's actually $79. Or you steal one from the lab and don't, no, just kidding. No, I don't believe in stealing anything. I believe in borrowing software long enough to evaluate it to see if I really want to buy it. And that evaluation process could last years. But I do eventually buy it. I'm just throwing that out there, not to make anybody feel guilty or bad or anything else about that, just saying. Are there questions about this? Game changer. Game changer number 2. You can get rid of all of this. You can close all of that stuff up. You don't need to have anything open right now. You need to open a single file for me, and it's this guy right here, this Bruce Fraser, copyright 2005 DNG. And if you double click on that, again, you will come into Camera Raw. If your file does not look really bland like this, you need to, there could be some corrections that have been done on it. I need you to get it back to where it would be with no corrections at all. To do that, if you can, look up at my screen right now. If you click on this drop-down menu and you come back to Camera Raw defaults, this thing will be at its base setting. This is Camera Raw with actually no work done on this guy at all. Make sense? Okay. In my case, you'll see right down here, I've actually got an open object down here. Yours should read open image. Is that true? Okay, that's fine right now. That's actually how I prefer things to be. So I'm going to change mine. However, we need to actually do a couple things, because we're going to bring this into Photoshop and actually do some work. To bring this into Photoshop, if you click on this hyperlink that's at the very bottom of your screen, this thing will open up, and this tells Camera Raw how you want to bring this thing into Photoshop. This is where you can change the color space from Adobe RGB. If you click on the drop-down menu, you'll see what your other options are. You'll see that sRGB will be in here, ProPhoto will be in here, other ones will be in here. I still suggest you work in Adobe RGB. If you click on the drop-down menu here, bit depth, we will talk about what bit depth is later. I suggest you stay in 8 bits per channel. When we get to our real workflow here using Smart Objects, which happens next week, the settings here will be even less important than they are right now. Resize to fit. If you uncheck this part right here, it will simply go at its default. Yours should not have been checked. It should be just at this default. Output sharpening, you would never do output sharpening at this stage of the game. You're just bringing this thing into Photoshop. How on earth can you figure out what output it's going to? You need one output sharpening for print. You need a different one for screen. You need a different one on your print size. If you're doing a giant print, it's different output sharpening than a small print. So the idea that you could actually adjust output sharpening here is absurd. If you've got that on, turn it off. Please tell me it's not turned on. Oh, thank God. At least they have something. And then finally, I have this checkbox right here, open as Smart Objects. I'm going to uncheck mine so that my screen looks like yours. That'll change next week. And then simply click on Open Image. And now what I would like you to do is go in any way you possibly can. You have 2 minutes to do this, and give me a really dark, moody sky. 30 seconds left. All right, time's up. How do we do? This actually looks pretty good. Reed, how'd you do it? Levels. Levels? No, brightness, contrast. Okay, that actually works, whatever. Again, pretty much everybody's doing this the exact same way, right? So, oh, you're still actually in Camera Raw, which is actually interesting that that's how you did it, but that's all right. We'll talk about it. So again, brightness, contrast. Oh, you work with curves a lot, don't you? Yeah, you know curves, right? Well, that's a good thing. I love that. That was a good try to begin with. Maybe not that dramatic. Kind of okay, kind of okay, kind of okay. What is going on here? Oh, yeah, that's a whole different issue. We'll talk about that later. That's what most people did, is most people actually put a curve or a level on this guy. I'm going to teach you guys a completely different way to dodge and burn. The problem that I have with dodging and burning, oh, sorry, I didn't look at you guys over here. Pretty good, pretty good. Very dramatic. Again, major curve kind of girl thing. Pretty serious, right? But when you look at this, what I would say, everybody come up here and look at Rebecca's. Yeah, okay, look at Rebecca's. She ends up with a really pretty wicked curve thing, and it's a smartly built curve because, again, she's not letting anything bottom out. We'll talk about what that means later on. But basically, all of her curve points still stay within this. She's simply remapping a lot of these tones. The problem that you run into with doing it like this, though, is that this file that we are looking at is what we call baked. The file is set. You went through Camera Raw, you had all of that raw data, and you made it into either a TIFF or a PSD. You baked what we call baked the file. And now you're trying to correct it. Well, you went from having infinite tonal structure to only having 256 tones, possible tones of gray. And now you're taking them and you are really radically pushing them into a different place. A lot of times what ends up happening is that it will shred your tonal range. It'll tear your tonal range apart. And what you'll end up seeing usually is banding. You guys know what banding is? You'll see instead of having these smooth transitions between your blacks, you end up with these definite hardcore lines of blackness. You don't have a smooth transition. And that's a consequence of trying to do a really radical move on basically a baked file. We are going to do something completely different to do this in a different way. This is also part of your homework. So if you follow along with this and turn this file in, this is one of your assignments for this week. You will get 100 on that assignment. I am doing your homework with you right now. Do not take notes. Do this. Save this file, and you'll at least for this assignment have 100 for it. I do this every single time. I'll do this as many times as I possibly can, okay? So take advantage of it. All right, so here we go. If we've done all of this, I want you to close this file up. You do not need to save it. We're going to start from scratch. So get rid of this guy. Don't save it. Go right back into the Finder, find it again, and double-click on it again. I need to get back into Camera Raw, which is where I'm at right now. Now, when I first started doing this, this was a long time ago. The very first time I did this lecture with this using this particular file was probably 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, there was a different version of Camera Raw. I need all of the I'm going to give you a set of values to plug in. These values are unique to this image. These are not values you use for any other image. I've had people work on other files and they plug in these exact same numbers. And that's not right. These numbers are numbers that I have developed for this file alone, okay? But most of you will know, if you've worked in Photoshop for very long, that this whole general panel has changed dramatically. It changed a huge amount in 2012. Remember in 2004, 2012, you had highlight recovery, and you had all of these other names, right? And you don't have those anymore. Well, all of the values that I've got use those old numbers. So we need to use the old interface, which you can do. To do the old interface, you can actually come back over to, again, this camera tab right here, the one that we were using for our camera profile. And you, at the very top, you will see process. You can click on this process drop-down menu. And instead of using the 2012 version of Camera Raw, we can go back to the 2010 version of this. Adobe was really smart to build these things in, because what ended up happening was this. Let's say that you had done a huge amount of work in 2010 and 11, and you needed to continue to work on more files from those shootings. But 2012 process was a completely different interface. Everything had changed. The processing engine had changed. This allows you to go back and process new files the way you did back in 2010 and 2011. Does that make sense? Or for that matter, if you were processing files back in 2003, you can actually go back to the version of Camera Raw in 2003. This is how you would do it. Does that make sense? So if you click on the 2010 process and then go back to the general panel, the first one, you'll see that you get the old panel back. You'll see we now have recovery is back, still light is back, the blacks are back. This is the way Photoshop used to be before 2012. Is everybody good on that? Did everybody get back to that original one? Because I'm going to give you a set of numbers now that I need you to plug in to build this, okay? Is anybody not good? Okay, so I'm going to give you the set of values. If you click and drag across the color temperature at the top, you can use the tab key to go to the next field. So we're going to start at the very top, and I want you to type in for the color temperature 6800. So 6800, hit the tab key, and it'll drop you down to the tint slider right now. You can leave the tint at a +7, hit the tab key, and you will come down to exposure. For exposure, I want you to drag this down to a -0.95, so almost a -1 stop. If you can't get to that exact 0.95, -1 stop will be close enough. Hit the tab key, recovery stays at 0. Hit the tab key, fills stays at 0. Hit the tab key, blacks goes up to 18. Hit the tab key, brightness goes up to 81. Hit the tab key, contrast goes to 56. Hit the tab key, clarity goes up to 52. Hit the tab key, vibrance goes up to 35. Hit the tab key, saturation is at 0. So I'm going to read these values out to you again. At the very top, your color temperature should be 6800 degrees Kelvin. Your tint should be +7. Your exposure is -0.95 or -1 stop. Recovery is 0. Fill light is 0. Blacks are 18. Brightness is at 81. Contrast is at 56. Clarity is at 52. Vibrance is 35. And saturation is 0. Is everybody good on this? And then you simply hit Open Image. And your image should come in, and it should look just like this. I need you to save this file, and you're going to save this to, well, save it to your hard drive, because again, this is your assignment file. You're not going to turn it in today, but you will turn it in next week. So save it in a place that you can keep it. Don't put it on the desktop of the machine here at school. Save it to a place where you can use it. And I want you to call this Dodge and Burn Castle. That's what we'll call it. So I'm going to come up to a Save As I am actually going to throw mine. I have a folder called Toss because I do this all the time. That's where I'm going to put mine. I am going to change this name to Castle Dodge and Burn. That's what I'll call it. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this guy. By the way, right now, we should actually check our settings in Photoshop really quick. You do me a favor and just click on this Edit drop-down menu and come down to your color settings and tell me what you see. Do you see North American Pre-Press 2 or North American General? General? Hey, Lexi, the color settings on this guy. No. The other shit I can put up. Sorry. Yeah. All right. Well, so you guys now have a file that is an sRGB photo space, and you don't know that. Well, wait, I take that back. We had set to bring it in as Adobe RGB, right? So hopefully, so change your thing to read North American Pre-Press 2 and say okay. And then really quickly, if you look at the bottom of your file, there's a little drop-down menu. Look at where I'm talking about on my screen right here. You can actually change this to show you a whole bunch of different things. You can get it to show you its size, how big it is, how efficient it is, a whole bunch of things. You can also have document profile. Will you click on that and tell me what this reads? It says what? It's right here. It's the little drop-down. Look at my screen again really quick. It's this drop-down menu. And change this to document profile. And then it'll tell you this is document profile. Mine says Adobe RGB. What does yours say? Okay, so we dodged a bullet here. Thank God. We all okay? Again. All right, so we're going to do this again. I want you to go back and find that DNG file a second. I find it in your Finder again. It's still right here, Bruce Fraser, copyright 2005. Double click on that. You'll come right back into Camera Raw. And this time, you don't have to go change the processing engine. It actually remembers it. It knows because, again, a DNG remembers the previous settings that we've done. So when you open this up, this is all the previous settings that we just put into this. DNGs maintain all the sidecar information that's actually in. So whatever we changed this to the last time is what we get this time. So we are going to do a new set of values in here right now. So if you can select the color temperature at the top again for me, and we are going to change the color temperature to 4,700 degrees Kelvin, which makes it significantly bluer. Hit the tab key. Tint can stay at +7. Hit the tab key. Your exposure now drops down to a -1.5. So -1.5 stops. Hit the tab key. Your recovery goes up to 96, almost all the way up. Hit the tab key. Your fill stays at 0. Hit the tab key. Your blacks go up to 32. Again, I'm just typing these things in. Hit the tab key. Your brightness goes down to 60. Hit the tab key. Your contrast drops down to 6. Hit the tab key. Your clarity goes all the way up to 100. Hit the tab key. 0 vibrance. Hit the tab key. 0 saturation. So I'm going to go through these again for you guys if you want to look at your screen. At the top, your color temperature is 4,700 degrees Kelvin. Your tint is a +7. Your exposure is -1.5. Your recovery is 96. Your fill light is 0. Your blacks are 32. Your brightness is 60. Your contrast is 6. Your clarity is 100. Your vibrance is 0. And your saturation is 0. And then say open image. And a second version of this guy has just come in. Now, in your all's case, because again, the preferences have probably not been set right, you guys probably have 2 images. You have 2 tabs right now, don't you? Oh, actually, you do have 2 images. You've got one in front of the other. You've got tabs. You've got 2 images. You've got 2 images. A lot of you have 2 images. That's good. That's what I told you before, the way I want to work on this. If you do have tabs, you need to tear them apart so that you do have two images. We need to be able to see both of these. And what I want you to do is I want you to actually pick the image that has got the sky, the thing that we just opened up. Clearly, I'm building this image for the sky. I need to add this image onto the original one that I built for the grass that's on here in the bottom. The first image that we built, those numbers that I gave you, were primarily for this ground right here. I actually have a third set of images that are just for the castle, but I'm not going to get to them today because I'd rather do something else. But so basically what I've done is I've built one file here for the grass, one file here for the sky. And what I want you to do in order to do this, you need to be able to see both of these at the same time. And you also need to be able to see your layers palette right here. If you cannot see your layers palette, can everybody see their layers palette? Is anybody not able to see their layers palette? Okay, what you need to do this is come over to your layers palette, click on the icon that's in the, click on the little picture that's in the layers palette. Click, hold down your mouse button, drag it on top of the image that we started with, the one that I built for the grass. But before you let go, hold down the shift key. Holding down the shift key will bring this into register. Now, occasionally you can do this without the shift key and it will come into register, but a lot of times what will happen is this. I'm gonna undo mine. You do not need to do this, just watch what happens to mine. You'll click and you'll drag in like this, and this is, a lot of times, it won't be like this. It'll actually end up looking something like this. But if you hold down the shift key, these things will actually come into register. So I'm gonna undo that part, and this guy is actually in register. So, the other file that we used to build the sky, it's done its work. This Bruce Fraser DNG, you can close that thing up. You do not need to save it. You now have a copy of this on your Castle Dodge and Burn PSD. Do you guys all have that? Then go ahead and save this, just an up and save to save this file. And then finally what we need to do is we actually need to build a mask on this. How is anybody in this room not familiar with masks? Okay, good. Then Digital 1 and 2 have done their work. So we are going to build a mask on this. I'm actually going to do the quick down and dirty method. There is a huge amount of building masks that we do in this class. So for instance, how many people are in this class because you want to learn how to mask hair out? Everybody, just admit it. You try to do all this comp work, and you got all this blowy hair shit, and it's the hardest thing in the world that there is to mask, right? So the reason you're really all here is because you want to learn how to do that, right? And I'm going to teach you how to do that. However, it's not the quick selection tool, which is what we're going to use to build this mask right now. So we're going to go through a whole myriad of ways to make selections. My belief is that if you can make a good enough selection, you can do anything in Photoshop. Well, wow, that sounds pretty broad, doesn't it? Photoshop will not cuddle you at night. It won't take care of you when you're in, never mind. Anyway, well, maybe it will, I don't know. At any rate, so we're gonna build a mask for this. I'm gonna use the quick selection tool, but we need to talk about how the quick selection tool actually works. The quick selection tool is, if you look up at the tool palette that's over here on the side of your screen, it's the fourth one down. If you come down 4 of these tool things, this is the quick selection tool. Make sure you do not have the, if you click and hold this button down, you'll get a flyout menu. You have 2 options of this tool. You have the quick selection tool or the magic wand. I want to make sure you have the quick selection tool. What the quick selection tool does, and the quick selection tool actually is a brush, and brush sizes you can control in a number of places. But the easiest way I use to set brush size is if you look at the P key on your keyboard. Right to the right of the P key are 2 bracket keys. There is an opening bracket and a closing bracket. The key that is exactly next to the P key, just to the right of it, makes your brush smaller. The one that's next to that makes your brush larger. And I want you to go ahead and make your brush a little bit bigger so that it's about the size like mine is right now. What the quick selection tool does, the way the quick selection tool works is it looks for edges. That's what it's going to do. That's what it's looking for here. And clearly, you guys can spot the difference between the cloud and the ground, which is what we're trying to find. But look at what's going on in here. There's a huge number of issues that we've got, edges that we've got going on in our sky here. this is not the best thing to use this tool on. You can help Photoshop out. And the way you help Photoshop out is to give it a better edge to pick. If you turn off the eyeball of your sky layer, wouldn't you say that that is a better edge to pick if you're looking to get the edge between the sky and the ground? Way better, right? Don't make Photoshop work so hard. Turn off the sky layer, and now we can use the quick selection tool. The thing about the quick selection tool you always need to keep in mind, you do not want this tool to touch the edge that you are trying to find. If this tool, unlike it being up in the sky right now, if this tool was down here across the edge that I wanted to find, it would not locate this edge down here. It would start searching for edges down here in the grass. It would not find this at all because I'm actually using the tool is actually touching the edge I want it to find. You have got to keep the tool away from the edge that you want it to find. So I'm going to start up here in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to click and start to drag. This tool also has artificial intelligence built into it. As you continue to drag across, it understands what it is you're looking for, and it'll actually take off on you and usually complete your selection without you ever having to get there. Because it understands, okay, he's dragging across all this cloudy shit. This is what he's actually looking to do. And it finishes your selection. Does everybody have this selected? Without the castle or the ground selected? Are we good there, girl? Yeah. Okay. Are we good on this? So then, now that you've got the selection made, turn the eyeball back on your sky layer. Make sure that the sky layer is active. You know it's active because it's highlighted right here. And then I need to move my screen. I've got to actually pull my layers out to get to the bottom of my screen because I need to get to this part down here to get to the add layer mask. Now, there's a number of ways you can add a layer mask. You can actually click on this icon right here at the very bottom of the layers palette. That will add the layer mask. You can also come up to the layer menu and come down, and you can actually do layer masking here. Either way, I prefer to actually work on these guys down here at the on the bottom of my palette. So I'm going to simply click on that. It has added my layer mask, and now I've actually got a file that has been processed 2 different ways. Can you do that degree of work with a curve? Not even close. You have got the power of a raw file, and you don't use it. Everybody does dodging and burning. Everybody goes in, and dodging and burning is either done with curves or you do it with a soft light layer. How many people in here, when I say doing dodging and burning with a soft light layer, know what I'm talking about? How many don't? It's okay, we're going to get to that because we do, in this class, actually do dodging and burning using a soft light layer, but for very different reasons than this. But look at the quality of this file. Save this file. You're going to turn it in next week and get 100 on this. Am I a nice guy or what? Right? One of your assignments is done. Now, next week, we're going to actually talk about refining the edge, because if you look at this edge right here, you can see it's a little bit janky. This isn't really sort of what I want. We need to actually fix this, but a good beginning. But the more important beginning is this. Raw data has the ability to do incredible tonal swings. This image, unlike the one that Rebecca did, her sky got actually pretty close to this, I would argue, but her entire tonal structure in there was completely fractured. She had taken these huge light areas right here and pulled them way down. That's just pulling this tonal, the tonal range of this image. It's shredding it because the image was baked. This has not been baked. When you work on a raw file, it's the raw data. Nothing has ever been stuck in place. It's completely up to you to reprocess it. The tonal range that exists in here has got all 256 tones in it. From white to black, all of them exist in here, or all of them could. I may not have a true black in here, but I could have it in there if it existed. Because I'm reprocessing it, what comes out of that processing is full tonal range. When I'm making those changes to a file that's already been baked into Photoshop, I start pulling stuff apart. That's all that ends up happening. Does this make sense what's going on? So this is how we need to start thinking about doing dodging and burning, especially if you wanted to get into doing really serious, hardcore tonal correction. Things change considerably. Is everybody good on this? Okay, then we've actually got just enough time to get through doing a custom workspace, which is where we're going to go next. So I want you to go ahead and save this file, turn it in next week. You'll turn it into the server that you guys are actually looking at. To get everybody's screen back to looking the way, so everybody's screen is looking exactly the same, come up to the window in Photoshop, come down to Workspace, come down to Essentials, which is the default. Click on that and then go right back to the very same place, up to the window, down to Workspace, down to Reset Essentials. This reset button will always change depending on which of these spaces that you actually pick. And it is always a two-step process. You always have to pick a new space and you always have to reset it. Now, Photoshop thinks that that's a feature. I think that's a pain in the ass, but that's me. What can I tell you? So I need everybody to follow along with me. We've got to do this in 10 minutes, and we will get this done. So typically, the way this screen lays out right now, the first thing you want to check is whether you have the application frame on or not. If you come up to this window and look down, it's this guy right here, application frame. If you uncheck that, you actually see through Photoshop to your desktop. This was something that Windows used to do all the time. I don't think you can even uncheck this on Windows machines. I actually like the application frame. I've actually gotten pretty used to it. But you'll see it sits up here, and basically all of your palettes sit inside it. So when you move the application frame, you kind of move everybody. So get it set up so that the application frame, so that you can still see the little three guys up over here. The one thing I will say to you about it is this, though. Workspacing, saving workspace will remember all of the layouts of all of these palettes. It does not remember the location of this application frame. So occasionally you're going to have to go in and reset this guy. The tools on the left-hand side like this are perfect. They're exactly where they should be. This is fine. I don't change any of that. On the right-hand side, these are collapsible panels right here. You see these little icons. I'm going to start at this and go to the top and work my way down. If you click on this first one, it is the history palette. If you click on this, it will actually open up, and this is the history palette. You need to grab this tab and tear it off and bring it over somewhere in the middle on the left-hand side. The next one, you've just now lost the icon for that. The next one is the properties palette. Again, you need to click on that and drag it off as well. You don't really need to care about where you're putting properties right now because we're going to relocate it later. The next one down, if you click on this guy, this is the device preview. I have no idea what the fuck this is. And why it's essential and the default for me, this is just, Adobe's making money on this somehow. That's all I know. So, yeah, see, it's asking me, oh, do you want to connect us? So already Adobe is now plugged into my version of Photoshop. The fuck out of my life. Drag the device preview off and close it up. To get rid of it, you click on the little arrow right here. I mean, the little X key that's in the top left-hand corner. Goodbye, Adobe. The next one, color. This is now an actual full-blown palette. This is not an icon. Click and drag this guy off. Nobody does color here. Click the X box to get rid of it, the little X in the top left-hand corner to get rid of it. Swatches, click and drag that off. Nobody does swatch work here either. Occasionally we will use this, but it's not something you would leave up all the time. Click the X and get rid of swatches. The next one, adjustments, click and drag this off. This is training wheels for Photoshop. The adjustment guy right here, all of these things exist at the bottom of your layers palette. Now you can't see mine right now, but at the bottom you have adjustment layers. That's all these things are. This is too precious screen real estate. Get rid of adjustments. If you've been used to using all those cute little pictures, sorry. The next one, styles. Click and drag this off and kill it. Nobody uses those either. Libraries is all the way over. This is definitely Adobe trying to sell you shit. Click and pull libraries off and kill that. The next one is what should be left now is layers, channels, and paths. I want you to click layers and drag it off. I want you to click channels and drag it off. And this is kind of where, and finally, let's go ahead and pull path off here as well. And this is what your screen, this is what you should be left with. It should look something like this. Is everybody good on this? Pretty good? Okay, looking pretty good here. Okay, good. So the first thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put, I'm going to drag level setting. I'm going to put properties up in the top right-hand corner. And as you start to come over to the edge of your screen, you'll see, if you go gently, that it'll actually hit the left side of your, the right side of your screen and stop. You could push it further. Don't do that. Just wait till it sort of like snaps into place. And the same when you go up to the top, you will actually, no, this one isn't snapping. This is where it gets weird with the application frame. It doesn't want to connect to this, but that's okay. Get it kind of close like that and then just let go. The next thing that I want to do is I want to put the path menu, the path palette right here together with layers. To do that, click on the path tab, drag it on top of layers, and when you see the blue line go around the entire thing, this thing is ready to dock together, and then you simply let go. Now you've got the path palette and the layers palette as well. We now need to connect this to the properties palette right here. To do that, click on the top of this window, bring it over underneath the properties palette, and very slowly go up. Now you just saw them snap together, but they are not connected yet. You need to continue to push up slightly. When you get that single blue line on the top, like I've got right here, then these things are now joined. So now if you were to click the palette, the path guy and move, everybody moves together. Then finally, for the work that we're doing over here, you need to click the bottom right-hand corner and drag it down, but don't go all the way down to the bottom. I keep losing those icons down at the bottom, and I want to keep those. So this is the beginning of what this side should look like. Properties at the top, layers and paths are right underneath it. And I go ahead and make layers the active one. You remember I said, for those of you who use adjustments, that little palette, if you click on this little icon right down here, well, I don't have I don't have an image open, so I'm gonna make an image really quick. You do not need to do this. But now I can put an adjustment layer. All the things that you had in that adjustment palette are sitting right here. So why take up the screen real estate? So I'm gonna get rid of this guy. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm missing one thing on here, and it's the info palette. So you need to come up to the window, down to info, and the info palette will actually launch. And by default, it does it as a tab with properties. I want you to tear the info palette off and bring it all the way over to the other side. This will dock against your, again, if you hold down if you slowly bring it next to your tool palette, it will dock with it. You know it's docked with it because you see this. Unfortunately, it makes the entire it makes the entire info palette the entire length of your image, which is wrong. I don't want to do that yet. So go ahead and separate this guy back off. Tear the info palette back on. We'll build this side over here first, and then we'll attach the whole thing to the tool palette. So the thing that I want underneath info palette is this history. So grab your history. Again, I grab by the very top. Drag it up till it hits the info palette. It'll dock, but then you need to push slightly harder to get that blue line and let go. History is now docked with info palette. And go ahead and click and make the, drag the corner of history down. So there, it's about the same size as your info palette. And then finally, we're going to do the same thing with channels. Grab the top of the channels palette, come underneath history, come up underneath, it'll snap into place, continue to push up till you get the blue line, and then you will get channels. And finally, now we can dock this with tools. Grab the very top of the info palette, come over here, it'll snap, it should snap into place, but once you begin to press, this is not gonna dock now. I thought that was gonna happen. This won't dock now because I've got all three of these guys, which is okay. Just leave it close by as it is right now. And then finally, click and drag channels down just a little bit more. We're almost done. there's one final thing that is missing for us, and that actually is actions. So come up to the window menu again, come down to actions. By default, actions docks as a tab next to history, which is fine. You can leave it right there. And then finally, click on the history palette to make it active, because we use the history palette a whole lot more than the actions palette. This is your new retouching space. This is exactly what it looks like. To save it, come up to the window menu, down to workspace, window, workspace, down to new workspace. This thing will open up and you can name this retouching. And I typically name it for the monitor that I'm working on, because this right now is going to be retouching for this projector, because that's what's on my screen right now. In your all's case, it'll be retouching for this iMac. If you're doing this on your laptop, you want to name it for what it's for. You'll see in my drop-down menu that I have a whole bunch of different ones depending. So I would call this, this would be retouching, R-E-T-O-U. C-H-I-N-G, and again, this would be for this Epson projector. So Epson, P-S-O-N, projector, P-R-O-J, and then go ahead and hit save. And this should save your workspace. To find out if that did work, and we've got 2 minutes to figure that out, come back up to window again, come down to workspace, go back to this essentials default. It will change things somewhat, but you'll see nothing seemed to really did change. Then again, back up to workspace, down to reset essentials, and that takes you back to the default where we started. To get back to our workspace, the one that you just built, up to window, down to workspace, find the one that you just built, whatever you named it, retouching, blah, 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 blah. And then again, back up to workspace, down to reset, and you should be good to go. Are there questions about this? Okay, so really quickly for next week there's a folder in here where you have to actually create custom DNG profiles for those. You need to turn those into me. There will be information on how to do all of that in here. There's also in here, there's a series of raw files. You need to apply that DNG profile, and you need to color balance. You need to do color correction on these. Again, all this information is in the assignment. Just read the assignment. If you have any questions, post the questions on the Moodle site in the excuse me, do you know how to form. Do not email me directly, because if you don't understand it, there's a good other chance that a lot of people don't. I only want to answer it in one place. Then we are going to reprocess one of these files, doing that reprocessing of multiple layers, just like we did with the castle file. Remember, we processed for the ground one way, we processed for the sky a different way. I want you to use that method to process the file that's listed here in this assignment. And then the final assignment is to do the Bruce Fraser Castle, which you've already done and are going to turn in, and I'll get 100. Now, I can't tell you the number of people who don't turn that fucking file in, which drives me nuts, because you've just done it. Are there questions? Killer.
How do you
yes.
want the files? As TIFFs or as...
Oh, and that's a great question. How do you want me? How do I want you to save files? Either save them as TIFFs or PSDs. I want layered files. Do not flatten them. Don't save them. I don't want to see JPEGs, either TIFFs or PSDs. There's different pros and cons about which one you do it in, and we can talk about that next week. Are we good on this? All right, guys. I'll see you next week.